Hey guys, Code Vlogs Episode 7. Still working on Ancient Archer version 6. It has been a pretty interesting experience. Of course, in the previous episode, we were on this core chaos branch here. We're no longer on that branch. It was a good experiment. I implemented pretty much all the useful stuff from it into the main one already. Those core features being, well, I guess as we kind of went through those episodes, you heard it. But mainly the multi-windowing and fixing up a few things with that package manager. And there were a lot of structural tests. The windowing is all coming in. I'm bringing it under OS interface. Probably going to rename this render folder view at some point or something along those lines because I think that makes sense. But currently right now I'm just working on the front end and making sure everything hooks up correctly. But once this is all done, the great thing about this is we're going to be able to launch multiple windows and have user-specific controls and stuff going on each window. So that just opens up a lot of capabilities for really cool stuff and applications that you could make with this, because being able to full screen something on each monitor and have your own specific controls going on, you could basically make, like, those cool movie interfaces they do where it looks like something you've never seen. Yeah, you could make something like that, because you could fully just set it up exactly how you want with as many windows as you want and doing whatever you want on each window and all your specific controls. So it just gives it a lot of variety of uses. But I know this was like this sort of feature was classically used in, I think, one of the Command and Conquers, where you could have a second window pop up that would be like a map of what you got going on. I could be totally wrong on the game, but there was some game that did this. Maybe it was Supreme Commander or something. Anyway, you could have a map of what's going on a second monitor, and it would just pop it up in a second window. So you could do stuff like that. I don't see that in games anymore. Usually it's just one big full screen and they do everything there. That's cool and all, but I just want the extra capabilities because, well, personally, I just want to use the capabilities, and I think it'll be cool to play around with, and looking forward to making stuff that uses them. Them being the multi-window feature. All right, well, a lot of restructuring to do, and it's not going to be too bad. It looked pretty intimidating, but after I took a couple days off and like rested, it suddenly looks a lot less daunting. Notably, I want to cut out some old features that are completely useless, like this non-spammable keys timeout thing I had going on. This is actually entirely useless because this is for the end user to design. Sure, you can have it in the engine, whatever, but ultimately it just takes up space for something that's more of an end user decision, because they can just use your standard non-spammable, yeah, the opposite of this, the normal one that just registers as many keys as you press. They can just use that, and they can program in their own timeouts if they want. So we'll just leave that up to the end user and not add that. It's kind of useless when I thought about it. The more I thought about it, the more I was just like, this really has no point. If they don't use it, it's just here for no reason. And if they want to use it, they should just implement their own cooldowns. These are the things you just learn from making these mistakes. And it's important to make mistakes. If you're having trouble advancing, the best advice I can give you is go try and make mistakes. Rest, read, come back later. It'll just keep getting easier and easier every time you do, and that goes for everything, including programming. At this point, the task work has actually become rather menial. The hard thinking is mostly done, at least for a little bit. And basically all I'm doing is I'm going through this entire header file, which is quite large, 200 lines. It's the entire front end of what's available to the end user. So it's naturally, it's a lot of stuff, and it's probably only going to grow. But we want to refine it to be as efficient and intuitive as possible is really the goal. But that comes with time and as it matures. So all we're doing now is we're going through these functions and we're making sure they're in the ancientarcher.cpp, which is our kind of main ties everything together type file. The loop, the controls, the windowing, all that. And I've decided to go for now with a system of a list of windows, kind of like we had in the core chaos branch. And with this list of windows, we can keep track of instances running. And anytime we initialize a new window, we'll just increment these. And they also use some global controls, because we don't want to create separate controls for each. They're just going to come from the OS. And that's basically about it. as far as that goes. So yeah, a lot of menial work of going through all this, straightening out every single one of these functions, removing stuff we don't need anymore, stuff like that. The thoughts on all the shaders is done for now. I figured out a system of doing that. I'm not sure if I recorded all of that talk, but basically I was considering how to do the default shaders, and I decided to just put a file on the root level called default shaders. And basically it's very simple. It just initializes them if they're not initialized. But this way we can use, I'll show it here. It makes a little more sense. We can use this file, and essentially we have these static variables. So there's some interesting thing about class static variables. So normally when you declare a static global, like out here, it's only accessible in that file. If you try to extern it and use it, it won't let you. But if you're doing it in a class, it can be used outside by just including the header. So that's sort of an interesting thing. I use it for the OpenGL stuff as well. It's very similar. I know a lot of people don't recommend this, but this works. And it is a way to make sure I don't replicate things. It's essentially a singleton class, except we don't have to do the whole singleton get and all that stuff. Because normally with singleton, all these are just normal functions, and you have a public function that's like, what would it be? It would be default shaders star get instance or something like that, right? I don't know if you know this already, but this function would be static and everything else would not be. And then you would have to use this every time, and this creates the instance. So just making everything static is somewhat of a different way of doing the singleton pattern. And I have no idea if it's best practice. I just like it because it's very nice to look at and very easy to see, and you just not having to do the get instance every time is amazing. That's, for some reason, that gets old to me after a while. Although, for clarity, I'm not 100% sure that this is better. So yeah, discuss if you will. But really, ultimately, the point of that whole little lecture there was that I just wanted people to kind of be aware of that and see what people think. And to also say, I'm done working on that, and I'm going to get back to all this. Basically getting rid of all these red marks and making sure all these function. I'll do one of them just as an example. So the next one we want to do is run. So I'm just going to do a search over here because this file is huge and messy. And I'm going to grab this entire run function. And we're going to go back up to the top. And basically I'm keeping them in order. So we should see the very top. First function should be init. There it is. The next function, I guess I'll collapse this for now since we're done with it. The next function will be run. And so on. And we're going to go do that for all these. So all these already exist. We just need to copy and paste them a little bit, clean them up some, make sure they all work. Double check that all these variables that they're supposed to work with are correct. And as our new structure, may have missed saying something about the windows. So the windows get an ID. And these IDs need to be managed in case you close a window. All the IDs need to update appropriately because they are an index into the list of windows. Yeah, so a list doesn't have random access. It's going to make this window switching a tiny bit slower, but I'm not sure if it's going to matter even with a ton of windows. Okay, so the run function, yeah, we look at it. We check instance windows. In this case, it's now, what did I change it to? Just M window. I'll change that name later. So cool thing about this, you'd never have to worry about names. If you're stuck on a name, don't worry about it. Just name it whatever, because later, when it's all working and done, you can just control RR, or whatever your rename feature is, and type its new name, and it changes all of them. So it's not like I have to worry about this in window being wrong or this instance running being wrong. It just doesn't matter. This is .empty. There's no window. Or I guess in this case, now that we're doing the whole instance thing, we need to make sure that the window that we're looking for is correct. So it would be like if window.size. Is there a better name than window? Because that kind of makes me think of the Windows OS, but actually it's just like an actual window, you know, program window like this. And window.size, if it's greater than, what would it be? It would be instances running. For instances running, it's going to say 1 on the first one, and the size would also be 1 if 1 running. So yeah, there we go. No window in it yet on this instance. That's what that should mean if you get -5. So yeah, we're just going to go down through all these, fix these all up. And we need to make sure this accesses the right one. It's actually rather important. So this is the slow part, because you can't just use Win access like this in window ID. You can't just do this on a list. That's the big downside. So if we use a vector, and we can use a vector here, we just have to consider how it grows. And it being static might affect that, but the way a list grows isn't gonna, well, I gotta think about that some more. I don't want to say too much. So yeah, that's basically what we're doing though. Just going through and fixing all this. So yeah, I'm gonna have to iterate through a little bit and get to this window. To do that every while loop is actually bad, so maybe we'll go to vector. I guess you'll find out in the next episode. All right, well, thanks for watching episode 7 here, day 7 of the vlogs. Hope you're all doing well. I appreciate you guys and all the support, and I'll see you around. Math Code Tech Tutorials over and out. Peace.